Okay, now that I have all my high quality reference, it's 3,000 pixels or bigger, I am ready to use that reference to sketch. And so this is kind of how I do it. I'm going to open these folders in a new tab and then swipe that tab out. And then if I ever want those images to be bigger, I can use the little gear here and say show view options. And I can play with the icon size and the space between them. But basically this is about the size I want. And by doing this, I'm going to spread my references kind of across the screen so I can look at them. Now what's tricky is I'm also going to be drawing on the screen. So it's easier if you're using a sketchbook, right? But I'm going to pull kind of my first two search terms, the big rocks and the coral towers. And then what's another one that might be nice? Nautical. And I'll pull that out. Right. I'm going to send this on the bottom here. Put this in the corner here. And now I'm going to open up my sketch. And I'm going to make it a little smaller. Minimize some of this stuff. Really use the screen well. There we go. So I have access to my two sketches. And even though this is really tiny, right? This isn't a lot of space to sketch. That doesn't matter at this phase because I'm just simply kind of plotting out how will I put these things together. So I'm going to use my brush. I'm going to put it on a new layer. So I'll create a new layer. And now, maybe I'll even use a different color. So I'll draw it maybe in red. Okay, so I'm thinking I want to use the ocean. I want it to be nautical. I want it to have like rocks floating and coral towers. So first I think, well, this one's a really good coral tower. So I want to use that reference, and I'm going to kind of build my composition around it. So I'm going to put it in the middle ground, right? Let's do a rough little sketch of it, these towers. And I'm going to label that, number 1. And then I can go right to the source, and I can just rename it, number 1. And I can mark it with a color like red. So this helps keep me organized. Then I think, okay, well, what's going to go well with that? I want to bring in the water. And so I'm thinking, okay, around that tower, I want this kind of rocky coastline. So I'm going to bring that in like a puzzle piece right here into the extreme foreground. And that will make the coral look much like a tall tower. So I'm going to call that number 2. I'm going to mark it red. Then what do I need for kind of the middle ground spanning beyond this? Well, I've got all the green grass there, but I want things to kind of break through it. So this might be where some of these rock formations might come in, like this one here. I might want to flip that horizontally. So remember, you can do that just like we did with our sketch. We can go into preview and we can go to tools and we can flip it horizontally. And now I can think about, okay, where would that work in the composition? And I think, no, it doesn't work as well, but this one does. So maybe the sandy shoals. Or maybe not, maybe none of those things. And I now go to other folders, right? So go to my references, and think, okay, now time to bring in something else. Because I've brought in my Choral Tower, I've brought in my kind of nautical water. Now I want to think, okay, is there kind of a rutabaga element I can use? Nothing jumps out at me, so I can think of mountains. So that's going to be kind of a background element. And I think, okay, I like this mountain, so I'm going to draw that in. Think what size I want it to be, where I want that horizon line to be. Right. I'm going to label that number 3. And mark it red. I'm sketching it in red. And I'm going to keep that open and out. Let's see, open it in a new tab, stretch it out into this corner. In fact, I can even stack them on top of each other. So this is how a lot of digital sketching happens, kind of organizing the screen, using this great kind of TV monitor we have to see a lot of reference at once. And then I'm going to look at storm clouds. And then think, okay, what's the sky I want? And I think I want this kind of rolling sky. So that's going to be number 4. It's good to keep it simple if you can. So I'm going to try to limit it to 5 elements. And then to fill in the rest, I have like this kind of amazing sun morning light breaking through the sky in the deep blue, so that's going to be number 5. So I'm going to use 2 different sky elements. And I'll always recommend that instead of just using one element for one thing, you always kind of combine them, right? Layer them on top of each other. We'll get to that. Okay, so those are 5 elements. Now what's the big thing that's kind of missing? It's the water here. And so I think I'll use this, the kind of cool water that we can see through clearly. That's going to be an element there in the background. So I have 6 elements there. They're all the red. That's my portrait format. So if I zoom in on that so you can see, this is just what I would do in my sketchbook. And I could, label each of these things, but by numbering them, I know what references to use. Right? Now, this is how you want to kind of judge your landscape. Do I have a clear foreground? I do, right? It's not very exciting. I might punch that up a little bit with rocks or something, but I have a clear foreground, something I'm looking past. Do I have a clear middle ground? I do. That's where the tower is. It's where the clear water is going to be. Lots of subtlety, gradations, color, reflections are possible there. Do I have a background? I have the mountains in the background. Where are my mountains? Right there. And then I also have the deep sky. So you want 3 layers of depth: foreground, middle ground, background. Does the eye kind of travel through it and back? Yeah. Does it feel really boring, like it's centrally symmetrical or there's a lot of horizontals and verticals? Not so much. I can play with the angles. So that has some potential. And notice it's not trying to throw everything into it, right? Okay, now using some of those same elements, but maybe some other ones as well, I know I want a Choral Tower, but this time I'll use this one, which is more elegant. So I'm going to name this number 1, but with a different color. And this time I'm going to draw with green. Make it a fairly dark green. Okay, so if I'm using that element right there, where should it go within my scene? And I think maybe over to this side. And this will be almost more of a foreground element. Especially because it's got some kind of blurry focus, already has some foreground shooting in it. So that's going to be element number 1. Next, what did I use? Something nautical. now I can use this scene pretty well. So that's going to be number 2. Oh, I'll call it 2B, green. And I'm going to use this coastline to set the horizon line. So it's a low horizon and those mountains and rocks. I haven't added any floating islands yet. That might come later. Okay, so that's going to be number 2. Keeping it simple. What does it need? Maybe I can get some rutabaga in there. Something weird. So let's see, what's a good one? I'll throw this in. Number 3. Where can I fit this weird thing? Well, it's going to be kind of growing out of the water here. Maybe this kind of weird spire, kind of fantasy form, right? I'll call that number 3. And now I need sky and storm clouds and maybe some background mountains. This will be number 5. And I'm going to go ahead and flip that. Flip the negative. So I have the mountains kind of countering the horizon lines down here. It's already set. So these mountains are kind of countering that. So I'm going to use that light source. And the mountains are going to run behind. And then I go to the stormy skies. And I might as well use this one. Enable this number 4. Oh, I called it number 5. It should have been number 4, but it's number 5. So this is going to be number 4, the sky. So I'll call it 4B. All right, so now I've got my sketches. So that was pretty fast, pretty painless. And now I'm going to do a screen grab of these. So if I did it in my sketchbook, well, first I want to see, do I have a foreground? Yes, I have a foreground. Do I have a middle ground? Yeah, the rutabaga is in the middle ground. Do I have a background? Yes, those back mountains and the sky background. Can my eye kind of cut in through diagonals and take it all in? There's potential there, right? And they both have at least 5 components. They're all high resolution. So both of these would work. So now I'm going to do a screen grab of my sketch. So how do I do a screen grab? I simply do Command-Shift-4 and draw a box around my 2 sketches. Then I can close all these references. All these reference folders. Just open it back up to this, right? And now on my desktop, because I did the screen grab, I have the screenshot. Now I'm going to open up that screenshot in Photoshop by dragging and dropping it down to Photoshop. Okay, so now I have to make a decision. So some of you, if you already had your sketches, you already did your screenshot, you have to make a decision. Which one are you most excited about working on? Right? You've got introduced to your components. Which one are you most excited about? And for me, that's always kind of clear even while I'm doing it. But maybe you'll have to discern, maybe you'll have to get group members' opinions. But I am most excited about doing this one because I don't get to do that many vertical ones. And I think this one looks kind of unique and like a fantasy, Whereas this one is more muddled across the space and there's a lot of empty space that I would have to work with. And I think this can use the different references in a more creative way. So once I've decided which one, I put a little star next to it, right? So I want you to save that. your screenshot of your sketches, of both sketches, right? So I'm going to say save as,